Africa. However, often the time taken by banks to approve loans makes it incredibly difficult for buyers to actually secure the transactions. Now, as a result, more buyers are turning to alternative lenders who are able to provide flexible finance solutions in just a couple of days. Now, this is according to Gary Palmer, who's the CEO of Paragon Lending Solutions, who joins us this morning to share more information on this topic. Good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live, Gary. Yeah, you know, to get a loan these days is almost, it's more difficult than summiting the highest mountain. That's all I'm thinking about these days. But I mean, going to the bank, trying to get a loan, supplying all your details, showing that you're fine and you're stable and you're this and you're that. But by that time, that house is gone.
Absolutely.
Is that how difficult it is?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I come out of the banking world and I've run a private banking business now, private lending business now. What we've seen is up until 2008, 2009, it was relatively easy to obtain funding from a bank, whether it was to go to an auction or just generally, for your business and what have you. And then obviously there was a big clampdown, when the recession hit, all the regulations, Basel III, a lot of bad debts came into the market. So I can really understand why banks have taken a conservative view. Unfortunately, the property market has picked up over the last 2 years, thankfully, but the banks have remained still very, very conservative. So the auction industry, you mentioned the auction industry. Obviously, the auction industry has also had some changes over the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But the auction industry is successful. And what we have to ensure that the people coming to auctions, have got the access to the capital and the funding to be able to purchase their properties.
How popular are auctions? I mean, is this almost the new way of buying a house in South Africa? Yeah,
so I would separate residential and commercial. So on the commercial side, what we've ironically seen since the instance with the Auction Alliance many years ago is that there are more auctioneers in the market now than maybe there were 3 years ago, and they're exceptionally busy. There are fantastic properties coming to the market, so that is very, very buoyant. I think what you've seen on the residential side, a lot of the stock of residential property used to come from the banks.
Yeah.
For the last couple of years, the banks have held back a little bit in taking the residential properties to the market. So I say the commercial properties are exceptionally popular.
Okay.
Residential, it needs to get there again.
I would imagine, though, if one is attending an auction or, you're going to go that route, you'd speak to the bank beforehand. You've got a figure in your mind. You would get approval first, and then you'll go into the auction. Is that not normally how it would work?
Absolutely. The only issue with auctions is that they're not suspensive upon you doing the due diligence or obtaining the funding. You almost have to do that a month before. And what the banks are hesitant to do is provide you a pre-approval. Okay. So they have to go through all that effort to approve a deal for you where you go to auction and you don't succeed. So the bank's a little bit hesitant in doing that, but that is the main issue with auctions currently, is that you have to get your funding in place before the auction, to really be guaranteed that if you get it, you can deliver.
Yeah.
If you can't deliver on issuing the guarantees, then you lose your deposit, plus you have to pay the auctioneer's commission up front. So you lose 16.4%.
16.4% of the total value of what you had bid for.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of money. Hence, alternative lenders.
Yeah.
So when we talk about alternative lenders, what are we looking at? I mean, not loan sharks, are we?
No, definitely not.
Something completely different.
Yeah. I mean, what you've seen since 2009 is an emergence of a lot of non-bank lenders. Maybe ex-bankers who've come into the market who are credible, reputable, and maybe have different criteria to the banks. So there are the loan sharks out there, and I really warn a lot of people, against, borrowing at these exceptionally high interest rates with people with limited experience in lending. But the lending market is interesting because what's happening, you've got the big commercial banks and then you've also got smaller banks.
Yeah.
And a lot of the borrowers out there are not aware that there are smaller banks in the market that they can approach as well. And what I've seen quite interestingly over the last, I'd say 2-3 years, is that there are a lot of other lenders, asset managers, believe it or not. I'm dealing with Sanlam, Future Growth, Old Mutual. They are now also lending absolutely.
So they're playing a big role in the economy.
Massive. As the main commercial banks started attracting, you had others filling the void. And also what's happened over the last few years is, as I say, private lenders coming to the market. Those lenders who have managed to obtain funding themselves, who are also lending into the space with different criteria to the banks.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Gary. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us about this. Another angle to buying properties, particularly property auctions, finding alternative lenders. Gary Palmer, the CEO of Paragon Lending Solutions, talking to us about that. Thanks for being our guest here on the program.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a